at the root of AI, at least my understanding of it anyway, you've got this machine learning neural network. The idea is that you feed data into it over and over again to get it to fine tune.
AI is fantastic, but you do need to verify. You do need that human element just to look at the reasoning behind it. Is what the output, does it make logical sense as well?
The more precise you can be with your inputs, the more accurate your outputs are going to be. So.
Welcome back to Raw AI Solutions, the podcast where we explore how business leaders are navigating the fast-moving world of AI and digital transformation. I'm your host, Denise Powell, and today we are joined by Rory Canavan. Rory, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Denise. Great to be here.
So Rory is the founder of SAM Charter. Rory, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. So I set up SAM Charter. I've been in SAM and ITAM for since November 2007. So whatever the calculation is there, getting on 14 years, I suppose. Worked for a lot of organisations doing SAM, such as FAST, such as Trustmark, and then Flexera. Come 2012, though, there was an opportunity to grab where I could do something for myself. So I did, and I established SAM Charter because what I was seeing in a lot of organisations is that they were investing a lot of time and effort and money in buying a product to solve SAM, but they weren't actually looking at process and the processes needed around the products to solve SAM. And as I'm fond of saying, I am a cooker, but I'm not Gordon Ramsay. And it's the same analogy. It's exactly the same analogy. So.
Fantastic. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey. What led you to go into this space and actually start up your own business? How did you get to being the founder of SAM?
I have to doff my cap in the direction of two dear friends of mine, Martin Thompson and Kylie Fowler, in that, excuse me, I went solo, as it were, when I set up SAM Charter. So it was me and the website back in the day. And my first gig came about as a result of Kylie requiring extended coverage. She was going on a sabbatical. I think it was coverage on the Olympics. And also she was doing sort of bucket list ticking off, going to South America and canoeing up the Amazon and stuff like that. So there was an 8-week space where her employers felt that she needed cover more than just sort of saying, come back in 8 weeks. So I stepped into that. And then when that finished, Martin approached me and said, I've got this gig that's too big for me to handle. Would you be interested? And that's really when I thought, right, I'm moving to London. I was based in the Northwest at the time. And I'm setting up SAM Charter, and that's what we did. So yes, myself and my partner Liz, we moved down to London, and that was the start of the company then, really. But when word of mouth didn't immediately deliver that third gig, because that was the thing. I just thought, well, this is easy. Business just comes along and just falls in your lap. But when the third gig didn't drop instantaneously through word of mouth, that's when I realized, this is the challenge in running a business. That was quite interesting. But that led to another sort of spin-off with Martin. So yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Does SAM stand for anything?
Yes, it does. It's software asset management. A lifetime ago, and possibly where I got this haircut, I used to be in the Royal Navy, and if you mention SAM to anybody in a military circle, it's surface to air missile. So it's completely different, not related in any way. So
I'd say. Well, today's main topic we'll be discussing today are the 3 disturbing trends that are quietly derailing transformation and what smart leaders are doing about it. So Sam, you've been in this industry for nearing 20 years now, 18 years. Have you seen any major shifts over the last year or so? Are your customers asking something different now as opposed to what they were a year ago?
I think you've always got, we are on an AI podcast, and all of a sudden we've got budget set aside for AI. How can we actually apply AI? And coincidentally, I've just written a paper on how you could, in theory, apply AI to software asset management. So that's of interest. Presently, what I see is a lot of people using large language machines, LLMs, trying to get those configured in such a way that they can take contracts and licenses and pick the weevils out of them so that companies have a more ready resource or a more flexible resource to understand what they can and can't do with software as prescribed by the contract and the licenses that are fed into it. At the root of AI, at least my understanding of it anyway, you've got this machine learning neural network. The idea is that you feed data into it over and over again to get it to fine tune. And if you've got contracts and licenses, you might have that volume of contracts and licenses to import in the beginning, but once it's done, it's done. So you haven't got this feedback loop to get it refined. Where I looked at machine learning and neural networks was to say that if you've got your input layer, and sorry if we're diving into the deep end very quickly here, but if you make your input layer on a neural network, the processes that you have in place, then you can use the KPI data to feed into a neural network. And then at that point, you will have data that will get better over time or can be tweaked and changed. And then you can arrive at a position of good, bad, or indifferent SAM in a dynamic context because the data is constantly coming in. You're constantly applying weightings and refining the reporting upwards to your output layer then at that point. That's one aspect, certainly, that I've seen crop up with regards to SAM changing in the last 12 months.
And with these market trends that are actually coming up, as you said, like AI is the new kid on the block, basically. What are you doing in order to stay ahead of the curve?
So I've just written a white paper on that very same sort of tedious explanation I've just given, so that if somebody wants to try and pick the weevils out of it slow time, they can go to my website, they can go to my resources page and download that paper for free and actually see how can we take SAM as a topic, which is traditionally quite slow burn because the data has almost been set up in a waterfall method to arrive at compliance report. How can we take process data and actually create something that's dynamic and near real time and can save money in real time? So that's what I've been doing. Also, I've recently seen a lot of increased regulation and legislation, stepping away from the AI for a second, around why SAM would be a good thing or ITAM would be a good thing to have in an organization. The Security and Exchanges Commission in the US, who govern well-being and good practice on the New York Stock Exchange, are increasingly going after financial institutions that look after personally identifiable information, which is basically all of them. And if you lose servers with personally identifiable information, you're going to get hammered and hammered hard. And there's numerous examples. They put it up on their own website, but what they use is, and don't ask me what it stands for, ffiec.gov is their sort of go-to benchmark or standard by which IT management is assessed. And so I'm in the middle of actually writing research papers on that and saying, right, okay, you've got SEC here, then you've got FFIEC, and you've got this topic of ITAM there. Where do they interlink? How do they work well together? The governing standard by which we should be benchmarked is an ISO called 19770-1, just tripped off the tongue. But actually pushing all of these together, it's a bit of a three-body problem. And so that's what my next set of papers is going to be on.
So you mentioned ITAM quite a bit over here. Can you explain what that is?
And again, I've got this Venn diagram in my head. SAM plus HAM equals ITAM. So software asset management plus hardware asset management equals IT asset management. Whereas software is purely focused on software and hardware is purely focused on the laptops, the servers, etc. IT asset management is the surround that looks after everything.
So are you currently using AI tools yourself inside your own company in order to derive these papers?
Yeah, I'm fairly good on what's in ISO 19770. I'm very comfortable with that. But there's upwards of, I've got to say, there's probably got to be getting on for about 900 pages on FFIEC. So in the first instance, I'm going to ChatGPT and saying, please, can you make a comparison between document X from FFIEC and ISO 19770 and give me the output as to where they align and where they don't. And then I'm taking that and then very much put my own spin on it, because what I don't want to do is just hit copy, cut and paste, shove it up on the website and say, there you go. Any monkey can do that. it has to come with my voice and my context. So that's what
Absolutely. And also, it's about verifying everything that's coming out of AI. AI is fantastic, but you do need to verify. You do need that human element just to look at the reasoning behind it. Is what the output, does it make logical sense as well?
Totally. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. When I was bitten by the fitness bug about sort of 7 months ago, and I went to ChatGPT, I think it was, and I said, can you give me a 5-mile running route from my front door in a circle back again? And here you go, Rory, here's a route around Warrington. They gave me a 40-kilometre route. And I had to go back and say, this is 40 kilometres, not 5. Oh, yeah, so it is.
Yeah, good catch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because we often speak about when you implement AI, it needs to be done responsibly. And you can't just, it's all about the correct prompts that you put inside as well to get the response back. And if your prompt is incorrect, your response that's going to come back is also going to be incorrect. So you do need that human element to it.
When I was sort of bouncing around school, sort of 16, 17, wondering what I might do for a living, the one thing that grabbed my attention quite quickly was the law. And I was given a presentation from a barrister at the time who said, if the construct around the use of the English language is insanely precise in law, he said, if I give you a sentence of the old dog ran down the street, am I talking about a 4-legged canine that is senior in years traversing a highway, or am I talking about somebody with a nickname of the old dog who doesn't like Coronation Street bad-mouthing it in a pub? And yeah, I think the more precise you can be with your inputs, the more accurate your outputs are going to be. So construct in that regard is quite vital.
Absolutely. So I know that you mentioned in some of your recent posts about process sits above tooling. And we're looking at the 3 biggest mistakes that companies are making in transformation. Would you say that's one of them? And why is that principle still so completely overlooked?
I think because people have that thing of in their heads that if they're throwing money at a situation, they're making it better. And my spare cupboard is full of trainers that are going to make me run faster, for example. And it's that writ large, but in a corporate context, processes is a tougher sell as well. It's a harder context to sort of drive through an organization because they're ethereal. They're quite difficult to put your hands on and touch. And it's practices, it's ways of working. You're assuming that staff are doing the right thing the right way anyway, because why would we be paying them such substantial sums of money to do a job? So there is an assumption there that people know the topic, know it well. Oh, I've been doing it for years. Well, you could have been doing it wrong for years. So where it's coming into greater context now, I think, is because organizations are starting to think that we can actually codify these. But that leads to automation, which can then lead to AI. But a bad process coded is still a bad process. So having that underlying understanding of what good looks like means then that you can apply that to any coding. And we're back to that language and precision of input into, say, ChatGPT or any other sort of AI engine. If you get that right at the baseline, it stands you in such good stead moving forward for any transformation moving forward. It means you don't have to go back and re-engineer things.
And I think one thing that companies don't do is they don't challenge their processes that they currently have in the organization. These are legacy systems. This is how we've always done it. Therefore, code against what we've always done. But there may be better ways out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what's interesting too there are certain processes. There's many processes which will sit across respective IT disciplines. So, for example, the example I'm fond of often using is the software request process. That typically it gets captured by service management under their request fulfillment banner, and that's fine. That's not a problem. Information security might have an angle on that as well, so that people are only requesting software which is approved by the business. And ultimately, Sam is concerned, well, we shouldn't be rubber stamping purchases that go through the request process if we've got a license on the shelf. We should be honouring that with a license on the shelf rather than going to buy stuff. So we're making the most of cost avoidance there, which is the gift that keeps on giving if you play it right.
Absolutely, completely. I often find one of the mistakes I see in a lot of companies is you have all these legacy systems, but what's not actually being captured is what capabilities does the system have? And out of the IT systems that you have, which one of those support those capabilities? And if you start doing that, you're going to see a lot of redundancy in a lot of the systems that you actually have out there, the tools that you have out there. Because a process is a process. Sometimes you don't need all the tooling that you have in order to do that process. And I think there was a quote that you gave that said, correct me if I'm wrong, the minute tooling takes over process, that's the end of transformation.
Definitely, yes. It's one of the things we actually practice in when we preach. I mentioned before we started that I might mention ITAM Accelerate. That is a collaboration between myself and Kylie Fowler to get the process kit up to the ISO standard required. And one of the processes in there to look at not just legacy systems, but all sort of software really, is to say, what does the software do and how many versions of software do we have that perform that same task? And because if you do reduce that, not only do you reduce your service management overhead and your information security overhead, you also increase your economies of scale with regards to power of contract and contract renewal as well, because you're concentrating your budgets into fewer vendors. You're not spreading yourself so thin.
Yeah. Well, with Sam Charter, you're focusing heavily around governance and control frameworks. Are there any operational blind spots that you consistently see in organizations that are trying to scale?
Recycling software as well. So software that's not being used after a certain number of days, why is it still there? And you could extend that to the cloud and then say, talk about hours or minutes. And actually see that organizations should be recovering those services and or then recovering that software, because that restocks the license pool that goes back to the request process, that then at that point when you request software in the future means that you've got it on the shelf. Otherwise, if it's sat unused on the IT estate for all the world, everybody thinks, oh, it's being used, it's being consumed, and it's not. So there's that. There's also this idea that we arrive at the production of a compliance report and we think we're done with SAM. When, here is our position with Microsoft or Oracle or IBM. But if you put that report in front of the senior management and it has that red or black figure at the bottom of the report, 9 times out of 10, they'll stare at it and say, well, what do you want me to do with this? The remaining 1 time out of 10, they'll just say, get it better. And you've spent all your time and effort and energy getting all this data together, but then not understanding how do we get that data better? And that goes back to the processes that you should have in place, and making sure that the data is as drum tight and as fresh as possible. Because it could be that those contracts sat in a pending trade that you're not aware of. It could be that there are data centers that are being collapsed that are no longer required or being relocated that haven't factored into the calculations. There's a myriad of aspects in the life cycle that influence the data that are being missed, because we're too sort of blinkered and headlong saying, get the audit date, get the audit done, get the ELP generated, effective license position, get that promoted, and we'll just cross the line and think the job is done. And it's circular. You've got to stay in sync with the life cycle, and ideally as close to the rate of change management in the business as possible.
Absolutely. That's such good points there. Given the rise of AI-enabled discovery tools, do you see an opportunity for smarter automation in how companies manage assets, or even reduce waste, or to spot those underutilized systems that we've just been speaking about?
So I guess what you could be doing, if you're looking to sort of apply AI and intelligence into anything that you're doing, we're going back to that. You mentioned that concept of SAM Charter and governance. Okay, those are the rules by which the business run, and that's the heartbeat of where AI should be sitting. These are the rules. Now, we can talk about, say, recycling, for example. The default position for most organizations is 90 days of non-use requires a software title to be recycled then at that point. That 90 days goes back to a Microsoft initiative around software assurance and being able to move software in a 90-day window. Why 90 days? That's Microsoft's concern. That's not your concern. As a business, you could say 30 days. You could say 60 days. So start to interrogate those rules. Put those at the center of AI. Put those at the top of any sort of machine learning that you're going to set up, any neural networks that you might set up, and then be guided by the data. And this leads me very much. It's almost that sort of logical Spock scenario that we sort of see on Star Trek. All of a sudden, things like politics and culture go out the window because your decisions are data driven. They're driven by logic. There is no sort of Tom, Mary, Fred only do things this way, and Tom, Mary, and Fred have become blockers in progress and systemization. Goes out the window. Hopefully, it really can act as a pinprick to adverse culture.
It strips out all those opinions and you actually start dealing with facts. Absolutely. So if we zoom out a little bit and we focus on the same charter, where do you want to be, for instance, in the next 6 to 12 months?
6 to 12 months. I'd dearly love somebody who has a product called ServiceNow installed, who have then paid for a SAM Pro license to come along and say, Rory, we've got SAM Pro generating this compliance report over here. We're not really happy with the output or the result. We want to get the data better. How do we do that? Well, you come along to me, and with the process kit that I have, we start to automate best practice, and we drop it into workflows that work for your instance of SAM Pro. That's where I'd dearly love to be in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, taking an organization through to that point where all their processes are generating KPI data. And then we can take that KPI data and we can start to think about AI and improvement and how we can use a neural network to drive an organization ever higher up the maturity curve. Because getting to that point is top dog SAM, where you've got KPI data to look at in the first place. But really what should be now top dog SAM is taking that and putting it into a neural network and seeing how you can get your weightings to influence that data to make informed decisions moving forward.
So you mentioned quite a few times about neural network. Can you explain what is that?
Oh God, can I? So I did a bit of research way back. I'm delving into the paper that I wrote, but bear with me. So a neural network is a mathematical construct by which data is investigated and analyzed. Typically, it's on 3 layers. You will have an input layer at the first level. You will have a hidden layer in the middle that does a lot of calculations. Those calculations are influenced by weightings. And I want you to consider your weightings a bit like the graphic equalizer on the hi-fis in the 1980s and 90s, where if you wanted the singer's voice prominent, you would raise up the middle weighting, as an example. Those results go through the same calculations again and arrive at an output layer to declare whether, for example, with the US Navy, they use neural networks to detect or to interpret sonar pings coming from things that they ping in the sea as to whether it's a Russian submarine, is it a whale, is it a sunken wreck. But that's where the machine learning comes in, because you need to look at it from multiple angles, from multiple different ways, distances and quality of sound, etc., to be able to help filter that massive data that comes out of it into a yes or no decision at the top of a neural network to say, yes, it's a Russian submarine, or it's a whale.
So basically think of Mission Impossible.
I tell you where I'm thinking of it, and I actually quote this in the paper, is Hunt for Red October. Yes. They actually have a scene in it that is about how when the new class of Russian submarine comes along, the software defaults to its original intention or purpose, which was to measure volcanic activity on the seabed floor. So this new submarine comes along and, hang on, is it a magma displacement sort of 3K away? And the sonar operator then goes to the captain, I think we've got something here. And that's where the story starts. So
love that. So with Sam Charter, what are your biggest challenges you're facing right now?
Biggest challenges facing right now is, I think, is breaking through and breaking into that sort of ServiceNow ecosystem. I'm not a formal ServiceNow partner. It is, unfortunately, it is me and the website still after all this time. So I don't have the resources or the team behind me to actually sort of, burst those marketing bubbles and make my way in. So this is hence me, doing a lot of the writing around AI, a lot of the FFIEC topics, how we can make SAM and ITAM relevant in the 21st century. So yes, it's that sales funnel thing, it's that pipeline thing, it's that growth thing, really. Yeah, they're the issues that I'm sort of facing as Sam Charter, as an entrepreneur at the moment.
And if you could solve one issue, like a click of a finger, what would it be?
It would be that organization who is screaming out for SAM expertise in regards to implementing SAM Pro in their organizations and how they need to get their workflows better. I'd sign up for that all day, every day. We'd get them there, and if they want to then chisel into their AI budget after that, we can do that too.
That's brilliant. Well, before we wrap up, what is one piece of advice you would give yourself that you wish you had someone had told you right at the start before you started your own company?
Oh God. Okay, you might need to pause and do some editing here for a minute, because I don't know that I've ever actually thought about that. Just to stick with it, I look back, and it's 12, nearly it's 13 years now since I've been in business for myself. It's mostly been good. There have been tough times. It's peaks and troughs. It happens. But just to stick with it, it's been a great journey, and I've bumped into a lot of good people. So it's been very enjoyable.
Perseverance prospers. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if listeners would like to know anything more about Sam Charter or connect with Rory directly, please see the contact details below. But Rory, it's been absolutely such a pleasure having you on the podcast. Really interesting conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Denise. It's been a blast. You're very kind.